Careful, Grandpa. That relic might shoot dust instead of bullets. They laughed at him, mocked his rifle, smirked at his age, and called him Gramps like it was a joke. But the old man didn't flinch. He just rolled up his sleeve. That's when it happened. The room froze, because the tattoo on his forearm, a dagger wrapped in a serpent, wasn't just ink. It was a warning, a symbol tied to a unit that officially never existed. Then came 3 shots, one hole, and the room, silent, like they'd just seen a ghost. This is the story of Lane 7 and the quiet man who earned it forever. The sun was already working overtime by mid-morning, casting hard light across the cracked clay of rural Texas. Out past Waco, where cell phone reception came and went with the breeze and the smell of mesquite drifted through every open pickup window, there stood a quiet, utilitarian place known to locals as the Hollow Ridge Outdoor Range. It wasn't flashy. Just 10 lanes, a tin roof overhang, and a metal shack with a fridge stocked with off-brand soda and hand-painted signs about gun safety. But it had character, it had routine, and for some it was the one place where noise faded and memory sharpened. That day, however, it didn't start quiet. A black Suburban pulled in hard, tires spitting gravel, followed by a second. 6 individuals poured out, talking over each other with the loud confidence of a crew that had just wrapped a boardroom pitch and were still high on their own adrenaline. They were from Dallas, some marketing firm, judging by their polos and how often they name-dropped brand alignment. This was their tactical retreat, a weekend meant to build team cohesion, leadership skills, and grit, according to the buzzwords thrown around. Instead, they brought custom rifles, GoPros, and $200 gloves they'd never sweated in, matching tactical vests, fresh off the shelf, designer sunglasses still with the tags on. One guy had a Bluetooth speaker blaring classic rock. Another wore a shirt that said "Weekend Operator," and not one of them looked like they'd handled a weapon that didn't come in a video game. They laughed loud, called each other bro, used terms like "clear the perimeter," with no irony at all. The manager on shift, Sam, a quiet, broad-shouldered former Marine, just gave them a tight nod and pointed them to the premium lanes. He'd seen their type before. Weekend warriors, no harm, just noise. Then, as if on cue, a second vehicle turned in. A navy blue Chevy Silverado, at least 20 years old, rolled to a quiet stop along the back row of the gravel lot. It moved slowly but confidently, like it had driven that same stretch every Saturday for decades. Because it had. Out stepped Raymond Mercer. To some, he was just Ray, the quiet old man who came every week. Always alone, always calm. 82 years old, though you'd never guess it from the way he moved. Slim but upright, like his spine had forgotten what slouching felt like. He wore the same thing he always did. Flannel shirt, sleeves buttoned tight, old jeans that had outlasted several presidents, and a beige cap pulled low over silver hair. He didn't speak much, paid in cash, nodded to Sam, walked to lane 7 without needing to be told. It was always his. He carried a battered leather range bag that looked more like a relic than gear. The zipper had duct tape on one side. The strap was fraying, but he held it like it was something sacred. From that bag, he'd unpack the same tools each week: a cleaning cloth, a small wooden ammo box, a thermos, and of course, his rifle, an M14, long, wood-stocked, iron sights, a rifle from another era. The Dallas crew noticed him in passing but didn't think much of it. To them, he was background, atmosphere, an old-timer keeping busy. But there were signs. Sam always called him Mr. Mercer, never just Ray. He'd once seen Ray disassemble that M14 faster than anyone should at his age, and clean it like he was on a mission. Another time, when a misfire startled a younger shooter, Ray didn't even flinch. And then there was the tattoo, or rather the glimpse of it. Once, on a hot day, when Ray had rolled up his left sleeve just enough to reveal faded ink, a shape, a curve, something coiled. No one ever asked. Ray never offered. But for those who watched closely, there was something about the way he moved, calm, exact, like memory was guiding each motion. Something in that quiet man, something they all missed at first, was about to change the day. Lane 7 was always Ray's spot. Even if nobody said it out loud, the regulars knew better than to take it. It wasn't a sign. It was earned. And on that Saturday, as always, Ray set his bag down with the same care someone might use, placing a folded flag. He took his time. Not because he was slow, but because he was deliberate. Everything he did had a rhythm to it, a method. He unzipped his old leather bag, peeled back the flap, and began laying out his tools. Cloth pouch, bore guide, oil bottle, tiny tin for spent brass, and then the M14. The rifle looked like something out of a black and white war film, its wooden stock dark and worn smooth by decades of use. At the premium lanes just to the left, the Dallas crew was already in full performance mode. "Dude, check this out." One of them, Tyler, the loudest, snickered, motioning to the others with a tilt of his head toward Ray. "That thing's gonna crumble when he pulls the trigger." Another leaned in, sunglasses still on inside despite the covered roof. "What's that?" "An antique. Did he borrow it from a museum display?" Sam heard it all from the bench near the check-in window. He was wiping down a scope mount, but his ears stayed locked in, jaw tight. He looked at Ray, wondering if the old man heard. If he did, there was no sign of it. Ray didn't flinch, didn't glance over. He just placed his ammo in neat rows, checked the rear sight, and opened his thermos for a quick sip. "Iron sights?" someone whispered loud enough to be heard, drawing a few chuckles. "No way that even works past 50 yards. Another chimed in, louder. "What's next, Gramps? Gonna load that thing with black powder and pray for the best?" The laughter came in waves. Not cruel exactly, but dismissive. Condescending. The kind of laughter people use when they're trying to make themselves look bigger by shrinking someone else. Sam gripped the towel in his hand a little tighter. He knew he should say something. Shut it down. The range had a policy about harassment, after all, but part of him held back. Ray had never needed defending before. Besides, Sam had seen him outshoot men half his age with scopes twice the cost of Ray's entire setup. Maybe, he thought, it was better to let things play out. Still, the discomfort in the air was thickening. Ray, as always, moved like he had nowhere else to be. He sat down, checked the chamber, loaded 5 rounds into the mag, but only clicked in 3. Then he rested the rifle across his lap and pulled his shooting mat closer with a booted foot. The Dallas group wasn't done. Tyler, cocky and red-faced from adrenaline, leaned against the lane divider and stage whispered, "We should get him a walker with a bipod. Might help stabilize that dinosaur." Sam looked up then. His marine instincts were twitching. One of the women in the group, Rachel, chuckled at the line, but then glanced toward Sam. Her smile faltered a little when she saw him watching. Sam didn't speak, didn't move, just stared. She looked away. Ray unfolded the mat and knelt slowly, deliberately, one knee down, rifle forward, resting it against the sandbag he'd brought with him years ago. The same one Sam remembered him sewing shut after the seams frayed. Everything about Ray had that sense of continuity, like nothing had changed since he was 20, except the weathered look in his eyes. "I bet the recoil knocks him flat," another voice said. "Hope he signed a waiver," someone added. More laughter. "And yet—" Ray said nothing. His face was stone, his hands calm. It wasn't just his silence that made Sam tense. It was the stillness, like watching a coil tighten without knowing when it might spring. Ray didn't look angry. He didn't look insulted. He looked ready. Sam stood now, not to intervene, but because something in the air shifted. It was subtle, like the hush before thunder. The loud ones didn't feel it yet, too wrapped up in their own noise. But Sam did, and deep down Sam knew what was about to happen. They hadn't just mocked an old man. They'd mocked the wrong old man. By mid-morning, the Texas heat had turned the range into a slow-cooking skillet. Even under the tin awning, the air was thick, heavy, unmoving. Sweat clung to the necks of the Dallas crew, soaking through their tactical vests and moisture-wicking shirts that promised everything but comfort. Tyler yanked off his plate carrier with a grunt. "Man, it's like an oven out here." Logan, the one with the GoPro, added with a smirk, "Hope the heat doesn't melt Grandpa's trigger finger." They were still snickering when Ray, sitting on the edge of his lane bench, calmly reached for the buttons at the cuff of his flannel sleeve. Sam noticed it first. The motion wasn't hurried, it wasn't theatrical, it was just measured, like everything Ray did. One button, then another. Then he rolled the sleeve back, slow. precise. The fabric stopped just above the elbow, and there it was, etched into the pale, weathered skin of his forearm, faded but unmistakable, was a coiled serpent wrapped around a vertical dagger, black ink aged to gray blue. Just beneath it, MACV SOG, Sector 5. 1968, Rachel's breath caught. Wait, that's real. Tyler stopped mid-laugh. What is that? Sam stood still, heart suddenly pounding in a way it hadn't since his deployment days. He'd seen that symbol once before, on a plaque in a quiet museum in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The kind of museum few visited, and even fewer understood. One of the younger guys, Chase, pulled out his phone. I think I've seen that before. What's MACV something? His thumbs flew across the screen. The glow from the phone illuminated his now still face. He froze. His voice, barely audible, cracked the silence. Guys, this says MACV SOG. It was a covert unit in Vietnam, like deep cover special ops, cross-border missions, Laos, Cambodia, high risk, not officially acknowledged. He kept scrolling, eyes widening. It says here they had an 80% casualty rate. Everyone's attention turned back to Ray, who didn't say a word. He didn't even look up. He was wiping down the stock of the M14, slow and steady. No one laughed now. Sam felt something shift inside him, something deep. Respect, sure, but also awe. That tattoo wasn't for show. It wasn't bravado. It was a silent admission, a mark of service in places where even maps lied. MACV SOG wasn't just another unit. It was the one whispered about in veteran circles. Missions that officially never happened. Men who operated with no backup, no recognition, and no guarantee of return. And one of them was standing right there, in Lane 7, folding his sleeve back down like it didn't matter. Sam, an Army sergeant before civilian life, instinctively straightened. He didn't salute. Ray wouldn't have wanted that. But something in his posture changed. Something in the air changed too. Tyler took off his sunglasses slowly. So, that's real? Chase turned his screen toward them. It's more than real, dude. These guys, they were ghosts. Even Logan, the guy who'd been live streaming for half the morning, had removed his camera. He wasn't recording now. He was watching, with a strange quiet in his eyes. Reverence. Maybe even regret. Rachel took a step forward, her voice lower than before. My granddad, he served in Nam. He never talked about it, just got quiet when it came up. I wonder if... She didn't finish the sentence. Ray still hadn't spoken. He loaded 3 rounds into the magazine, deliberate, smooth, and stood, placing the rifle back into firing position. His eyes locked onto the target downrange, and everything else faded. No more jokes, no more smirks. Just the sound of boots on gravel, quiet breathing, and the slow hum of wind shifting through the metal awning. The tattoo said everything he never had to. And finally, they started to understand. This wasn't just some quiet old man at a firing range. This was someone who had walked into places others didn't come back from. This was someone who had done things they would never have the clearance or the courage to imagine, and they'd mocked him until now. Ray stood behind the line, rifle in hand, posture straight and unshaken. 3 rounds rested in the magazine. Nothing flashy, nothing excessive. Just enough. He didn't check the group behind him, didn't acknowledge the sudden stillness, the way their laughter had dried up like dew in the sun. He simply adjusted his grip, squared his shoulders, and stepped into position. The old man and the M14 were one. There was no performance, no effort to impress. Just a quiet rhythm. Click. The safety came off. He took a breath, then another. Bang. The first shot rang out, sharp, clean. No overcorrection, no wasted motion. A puff of dust rose from the target 50 yards out. Bang. The second shot followed 5 seconds later. Same rhythm, same breath. No shifting of feet, no unnecessary movement. The target didn't flinch. Bang. The third round snapped through the air like it had a purpose. Because it did. Silence, then stillness. No one else fired. No brass hit the floor. No one even breathed loud enough to interrupt the weight in the air. One by one, heads turned toward the target downrange. A single hole, clean, centered, deep. 3 shots, 1 tear. Sam felt his throat tighten. He'd seen competitive shooters make tight groupings before, but this wasn't just precision. It was muscle memory forged under pressure. It was decades of discipline condensed into 3 perfect beats. There was no applause, no wow from the peanut gallery, just reverent silence. Ray exhaled slowly, lowered the rifle, and stepped back. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't have to. The only sound came from the wind rattling a paper sign near the check-in window. Then, like a breeze whispering through a canyon, a memory passed through Sam's mind. One he hadn't thought about in months. It was back in early spring, maybe March. Sam had stayed late closing the range. On his way out, he'd spotted Ray kneeling near the tree line, past the last lane. At first, Sam thought something was wrong. But as he got closer, he realized Ray was tending to a bird. A hawk, maybe, its wing clearly broken. Ray hadn't noticed him watching. He moved slowly, like trying not to scare the pain out of the creature. He pulled something from his bag, a rag, a small strip of gauze, some water, spoke to the bird in a quiet tone. Not cooing, just steady, reassuring. Sam never forgot that calm, the same calm Ray had shown now, holding a weapon. Same rhythm, same stillness, same mercy. Back at the range, the group still stood in quiet awe. Tyler slowly removed his cap. Rachel folded her arms, biting her lip. Even Logan's camera sat untouched on the bench, forgotten. Sam saw something else in their eyes now. Recognition, but not of celebrity or rank. Recognition of something deeper, a kind of authority that didn't need permission. Ray stepped back to his bench, unscrewed his thermos, and took a sip. Not a show, not a celebration, just routine. As if this incredible feat was just another part of the day. And to him, maybe it was. Because Ray Mercer didn't need attention. He didn't crave praise. He didn't wear his past on his sleeve for applause. That tattoo wasn't a badge. It was a burden, one he'd carried with quiet strength. Flashback, 1968, Laos jungle night. Moonlight cut through thick canopies like broken glass. A patrol of 5 crept through mud-soaked terrain. Ray among them. 25 years old. Steady hands. Eyes sharp. They weren't supposed to be there. Officially, no one was. The enemy hit just before dawn. Explosions, shouting. Brief and brutal. Ray dragged one of his wounded teammates across 50 yards of open jungle while tracer fire lit the trees like lightning. He'd held that man's chest closed with one hand while firing back with the other. Extraction was a rope, a dangling harness, and the sound of rotors slicing silence into salvation. He made it out, barely. The tattoo came days later. A medic inked it at a forward outpost, not for show, not for decoration, for remembrance, for the ones who didn't come back. Back in the present, Sam blinked hard. The sound of boots scuffling on gravel returned him to the moment. Ray wiped down his rifle with a soft cloth. Every motion deliberate, every inch of steel and wood tended to like it deserved honor. Because it did, and so did the man holding it. No one spoke. No one dared. The target still swayed faintly, 3 holes stacked into one brutal truth. Ray sat quietly on the bench behind lane 7, sipping from his thermos as if he'd just finished a crossword, not a surgical demonstration in discipline. It was Tyler who moved first, the same Tyler who had laughed the loudest, who'd cracked jokes about walkers and museum rifles and dust-filled barrels. His shoulders, once cocky and squared, now hung low. His hands were empty, fingers twitching slightly with the awkward weight of realization. He stepped forward slowly, not in shame so much as in humility. "Sir," he said, voice lower than anyone had heard all morning. Ray didn't turn right away, just set his thermos down and looked up, calm as ever. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," Tyler continued, eyes flicking briefly to the other young men watching from the sidelines. "I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what that meant." He pointed gently toward Ray's forearm, where the sleeve was still rolled up, the tattoo now half shaded in the midday light. Ray looked at him for a moment, not harshly, not with judgment. Just that steady, clear-eyed gaze that said more than any words ever could. Then he gave a slight nod and replied quietly, "Most people don't know." A pause. "But they should learn." That simple phrase hung in the air like the last line of a book, final but lingering. Behind Tyler, Logan, still holding his phone, mumbled something to himself, then opened the call app. He hesitated, glanced at Ray, then dialed. "Who you calling?" Chase whispered. "My dad," Logan muttered. "He was in Nam, 101st Airborne." He put the phone on speaker. 3 rings. Then an older voice picked up, rough and familiar. "Logan?" "Hey, Dad," he said, voice tightening. "I'm at this range in Hollow Ridge. There's this guy here. Older. Real quiet. He's got a MACV SOG tattoo." There was a long pause on the line. A silence so sharp it cut through the Texas air. Then the voice came back, slower now, reverent. "You show that man respect," his father said firmly. "You understand me? He's the reason I came home. Him and the ones who didn't." Logan swallowed hard. Yeah, I understand." The call ended and Logan stood there a second longer, just staring at the gravel between his boots. When he finally looked up, his face was different, less like a boy on a weekend trip, more like a man who'd just seen a part of the world no one had warned him about. Rachel stepped forward next quietly. "Wasn't luck, was it?" she asked. Ray gave a faint smile. "No," he said simply. "It was practice, and remembering what mattered." Chase removed his gloves and set them on the bench. No one was shooting anymore. The range felt less like a place for recreation and more like a sanctuary. The benches became pews. Lane 7, an altar. Sam, still standing near the check-in window, watched it unfold with something between pride and solemnity. He'd seen confrontations before, but never one that turned into redemption so purely, so simply. Respect wasn't demanded, it was earned. And in that moment, Ray had earned it without saying a word about who he was. Without flashing medals or handing out war stories. He didn't need to. His presence, his skill, and his silence spoke louder than any uniform ever could. Tyler looked at Ray one more time. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Ray asked, not accusing, just curious. Tyler shrugged. "For still being here." Ray nodded once. "Some days, well, that's enough." No grand speech, no movie-worthy soundtrack swelling in the background. Just silence again. This time, not from shock, but from reverence. One by one, the group stepped back. Their rifles remained on the racks, their ammo untouched. They hadn't come to fire anymore. They'd come to learn. And for once, they understood that real warriors don't always carry the loudest weapons, but the heaviest memories. The sun crept higher, spilling sharp light through the open sides of the range, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. But no one noticed the heat anymore. The group that had once swaggered through the gate, laughing and posing for social media, now sat quietly on the benches behind the lanes. Gear untouched, rifles set aside. Not a single trigger finger twitched. There were no more selfies, no more war stories invented on the fly. Just silence and a strange stillness that hung over the gravel like a fog of respect. They weren't playing soldier anymore. They were listening. Logan had taken off his GoPro entirely, setting it gently beside his unused extra mags. Tyler had slid his customized AR back into its case without a word. Chase simply sat with his hands clasped, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the target Ray had left behind. It was still pinned up there, still clean, still showing that one deep tear. 3 rounds, same hole. A reminder. Ray sat at the edge of Lane 7's bench, cloth in hand, gently running it along the barrel of his M14. He didn't rush. Every motion was precise, like a craftsman sharpening a tool he still depended on. Across from him, Emily stood. She was the only one still on her feet, though not out of defiance. She moved quietly, stepping up to Ray, not with hesitation, but with care. "Sir," she said softly, "I just wanted to say thank you." Ray paused. He looked up at her, eyes calm but unwavering. He didn't smile exactly, but something in his expression softened, just a little. "It's not about glory," he said, voice low. "It's about staying sharp." Emily nodded slowly. "I think we all missed that part." Ray returned to his task, brushing over the rifle's receiver with the same slow rhythm. Sam leaned against the wall near the sign-in desk, arms crossed, watching it all unfold. He wasn't smiling either, but his jaw had unclenched, and something in his chest eased for the first time that day. He'd seen young men with expensive gear before, men who thought a vest and a loud voice made them tough. But it wasn't often he saw them humbled like this. Not by discipline, not by skill, and certainly not by an old man with nothing to prove. The shift was real, palpable. The Dallas crew didn't pack up quickly, they didn't joke around, they didn't rush back to their SUVs and high-dollar gear bags. Instead, they lingered. Chase pulled his hat off. Logan wiped his sunglasses clean but didn't put them back on. Tyler, who once couldn't stop talking, sat in silence with his chin in his hand, looking out at the target like it had whispered something he didn't yet understand. Ray finished cleaning the rifle and slid it back into its case. Even the way he zipped it closed had intention. Quiet, final, like closing a chapter he didn't plan to reread. As he stood, the bench behind him creaked softly. He slung the worn strap of his range bag over one shoulder, thermos in the other hand, and turned toward the gravel path that led back to the parking lot. He didn't look for acknowledgement. He didn't need it, but he had it, fully, completely. Emily stepped aside to let him pass, and as he did, she whispered again, just loud enough for only him to hear, "I'll remember today for the rest of my life." Ray didn't respond, but the slight tilt of his head, just barely perceptible, was all the answer she needed. Behind them, the once boisterous crew remained seated, quiet in their own reflections. They hadn't come to be changed, but they had been. Ray walked back toward his old Chevy Silverado, gravel crunching beneath his boots. The late afternoon sun dipped low behind the hills, casting long amber shadows across the range. He didn't turn around. He didn't wave. No farewell, no parting words. He didn't need them. There was no fanfare. Just the sound of cicadas starting up in the distance and the creak of the driver's door as he pulled it open. He placed the M14 gently in its case across the back seat. The thermos, now nearly empty, slid into the cup holder beside a radio dial worn smooth from years of turning. A familiar voice on the local AM station introduced a track, Miles Davis, something from the late 60s, and Ray leaned back into the seat, exhaled, and let the brass horns wash over the silence in his chest. Back at the range, no one had touched Lane 7. They simply watched the taillights disappear down the dirt road, red dots slowly swallowed by dust and distance. Logan was the first to speak. "I took a picture," he said hesitantly, "of his tattoo. When he rolled up his sleeve. It felt wrong then, but now—" He trailed off. No one stopped him as he pulled out his phone and uploaded the image. No caption, no hashtags. Just the photo. A weathered forearm, a faded tattoo of a serpent wrapped around a dagger, and those chilling words beneath it, MACV SOG. Sector 5, 1968. By nightfall, the post had caught fire. Veterans from across the country began commenting, some with usernames like JungleRat69 or Delta Quiet 73. Others just left initials and single words like respect. A few uploaded old photos of their own, tattoos that looked eerily similar, black ink that had bled with time, just like Ray's. "My uncle had that same symbol," one comment read. "He never talked. Not once. Now I understand why. That's the real deal," another wrote. "You don't earn that tattoo on a base. You earn it deep in a jungle no one ever admits we were in." "Those guys were ghosts," a former Green Beret commented, "and we owe them everything." Historians chimed in next, then journalists, then military archives pages. The post was shared across forums, subreddits, vet groups, Facebook timelines, and email chains, each one spreading the same hushed reverence. And at the Hollow Ridge Range, Sam made a quiet decision. The next morning, before the range opened, he walked to Lane 7 with a small wooden plaque he'd carved himself overnight. He screwed it into the post above the bench. Burned into the wood. Lane 7, reserved in honor of Raymond Mercer, MACV SOG. Respect, no exceptions, no ceremony, no photos, just truth. By the time Ray pulled into his driveway that night, the fields around his small home were already dark. He turned off the ignition and sat in the truck for a moment longer. The jazz was still playing. No medals hung on his walls, no framed flags, no shadow boxes. Just one photo on the windowsill inside the house. 5 young men in jungle fatigues, standing shoulder to shoulder in front of a chopper. Their faces hard, eyes sharp. Ray was in the middle, younger but unmistakable. Beneath it, a handwritten label. Laos, Sector 5, 1968. He didn't check his phone, didn't know about the post, didn't care to, because men like Ray didn't do it for attention. They did it to survive. And when they came home, if they came home, they kept their rifles clean, their memories buried, and their skills sharp. Some for nostalgia, but men like Ray, they did it out of duty, even now. In a world where volume often drowns out value, Ray Mercer reminds us that silence, when earned, can speak louder than any headline. His story isn't just about precision shooting or secret missions. It's about humility, discipline, and the quiet dignity of those who've given more than their share without ever asking for applause. Too often today, we overlook the elderly in our communities, the men and women sitting quietly in diners, walking with canes down sunlit sidewalks, standing in line at the pharmacy. But how many carry stories like Ray's? How many have seen things we can't imagine and simply choose to carry it with grace? In an age where so many chase recognition, Ray showed us what it means to live with purpose, not performance. And maybe that's a lesson worth remembering, not just on weekends at the range, but in how we treat strangers, how we raise our kids, and how we define real strength. What would you have done if you were there that day? Would you have recognized the weight of his silence? Let us know in the comments. What does respect mean to you? If Ray's story moved you, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe for more stories that honor the quiet heroes among us. And don't forget to share it with someone who still believes in values that never go out of style. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next story.